Mr. Speaker. How are you?
I'm doing well. Interestingly, Jonathan Turley, the liberal Democratic attorney, wrote a column today saying that she has so disgraced the House that she really should not be Speaker. And to have someone like Turley say that, and I think he's essentially right because, first of all, the State of the Union is a constitutionally required speech or report. It doesn't have to be a speech, but it's a report. So the president is operating under the Constitution to do the right thing. She is then demeaning that in front of the entire country in a way that, as I said in my tweet, having been Speaker, having sat behind Bill Clinton for 4 consecutive years, having shaken his hand every time, and
by the way,
the right phrase.
I did watch it, and I want to say, hi, Newt, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm teasing. Go ahead.
Oh,
I got to bring some levity to this.
Well, I got to tell you, I think it was the very first time he came in '95. And if you'll notice, the president hands each of them a copy of the speech. And so Clinton turns and he hands me this envelope. And I open it, and it says, "Dear Speaker Gingrich, you're right. I resign. William Jefferson Clinton." And
yeah.
Here's this thing. And I'm showing it to Al Gore.
Wow.
And Clinton turns around and says, "Oops, I gave you the wrong thing." And takes it back. But I want to use that as an example. You can be deeply disagreeing and not have to be a childish 7th grader involved in a bullying match. And what Nancy did and the way she did it, I watched it and I just thought to myself, what a despicable act to demean the entire country, to demean the Constitution, to demean the office of Speaker, which, remember, the Speaker of the House is the only office in the legislative branch that is designated by the Constitution, and she is third in line to be president. And she ought to have some national obligation to be patriotic. And instead what we get is this kind of amazingly childish behavior, I thought.
But this has been 3 years of this, Mr. Speaker. This has never stopped. What I'm saying to people, if we look at everything now through the prism of an election in 271 days, everything matters. Historically, peace and prosperity drive elections. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That question, I think, can be answered with an affirmative yes by every measure. Promises made and kept. Foreign policy success. Baghdadi, Soleimani, the caliphate. Economic record, unemployment low, record after record after record, impacting every single demographic, thankfully, in this country. The manufacturing jobs that weren't coming back are coming back. Trade deals with China. So my question is, what have they done for the last 3 years except this? Because I follow this closely. I can't see much.
Well, look, I think we're going to have a very clear choice this fall. You have a president who, by the way, I think has endured a beating unlike any president except Abraham Lincoln. I mean, the level of vitriol and hostility, and I think what's really offended him the most is the pain it causes his family. I mean, Trump's a big boy. He can play in this league. But when your family gets smeared, when you have the kind of vitriol and the kind of nastiness, and you have to endure it every single day, and there's no way to get around it because these people are your mortal enemies. And that is what we're up against. I mean, from the standpoint of the left, they are the mortal enemies of Donald Trump, and they will hate him as long as he's in office. And in fact, they'll hate him after that, but it won't be a functioning matter anymore. And that's what we're facing. These are people who have a pathological need to go after the President of the United States and cause him as much pain as they can. And I think from his perspective, after I reflected on it, I think he was right not to shake her hand. I mean, she clearly was setting up to despise him. She says things every day that indicate she despises him. Well, why would you have an obligation to be positive and pretend you're friends to a person who's openly telling the world she hates you? And I think that he's exactly right. And I think he was also right today to point out that when she said she prays for him, that was about as despicably dishonest as you can get. I mean, to lie about prayer strikes me as being about as low as you can get. And that's exactly what she was doing.
I think I'm probably the only one in the media, and I got to tip my hat to you. You did it in your book on the president that was a bestseller, that actually scrolls all of his promises made and kept and all of his success. We've watched a lot of States of the Union over the years. You a few more than me, not many, but a couple more. I never saw a better speech in my life.
I'm a lot older than you.
Okay, but I'm being nice. Let me be nice.
All right.
But I'm listening to that speech, and he's just going through record after record after record of accomplishment. And to me, it was the best State of the Union I'd ever seen, and it was stunning. And when you compare it to what they all that they've done and just hating him full time, I mean, you're right. I don't even think it's a choice election. This is America on the brink tipping point election, because God help us with their new Green Deal and Medicare for all, $94 trillion, $54 trillion.
No, it's so important. I'll have a book out in June called The Trump Effect, and it specifically is like my old-time Go-Pack tapes. It's designed to say to the country, look, you have two futures here. We have not faced this big a choice since 1860. I mean, you have people on the left who hate America. They want to use the law to force you and me to change our lives. They want to have all control in the government. And if they get a chance to win, we will not be the same country a year later. And then you have what Trump has done, which is truly one of the most extraordinary achievements in American history. I mean, if you look at what he's accomplished just in judges, where I think he and McConnell have been historic in their focus and their discipline, and they have steadily improved, in a way that you could never have imagined. One out of every 4 federal judges right now has been nominated by Trump, approved by the Senate. One out of every 4. 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices, just in that one zone. If you take regulations, they've been repealing 7 regulations for every new regulation. That's beginning to decentralize America out of Washington and give the American people a chance to actually run their own lives again. So I look upon this as one of the most historic presidencies, period, and somebody who is changing America. And what we're going to decide this fall is a real referendum. Is this the direction we want to go in, creating jobs, reducing government, lowering taxes, standing up for American values and American interests, or do we, in fact, want to go back to the left and do the kind of things that the left would want us to do? I can't imagine a more important or a more decisive election.
What do you make of what happened in Iowa with the Democrats? Because, I mean, you can't make this up. Now, by the way, they're the only ones that actually were involved in colluding with Russia and then independently Ukraine with the DNC, according to Politico in a Ukrainian court, which is a fascinating. They're taking on such breathtaking hypocrisy. We know what happened with Obamacare. We're all paying 200% more. 40% of the country has one choice. Millions lost their doctors and plans. Now that they rigged an election last time against Bernie, they tried to rig it against Trump. Now they're going to try and rig another primary?
Well, look, if you look, I was just looking at the numbers a while ago. If you look at the way the news media has distorted what happened in Iowa, the fact is Bernie came in first in the first round. The fact is Bernie came in first in the second round. So if you were just counting votes, which is not what they're reporting, Bernie beat Buttigieg. But the way they rigged it, it makes Buttigieg look like he might have tied Bernie or he might be slightly ahead of Bernie. So he gets a nice little bounce going into New Hampshire. But the truth is, Bernie won that. And I think, and the truth is, and I wrote a column this week entitled Bye Bye Biden, Hello Bloomberg. And I predicted in that newsletter, I think there's a very good chance that you are going to end up seeing a genuine open convention in Milwaukee.
I agree. More and more. I'm seeing
utterly fascinating.
All right, we'll take a break. Former Speaker of the House, Newt. All right, as we continue, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. We have known each other for all these years. I had the honor of being the MC of your event the night you became the Speaker of the House. I look at 3 waves of conservatism in our era, and we have, of course, Reagan, the contract with you, and I would argue now a transformational presidency with Trump. But one figure has been the leader in this movement in so many ways, and that's our mutual friend Rush. And you saw what happened the other night.
Well, first of all, of course, I hope all of us we'll keep Rush in our prayers.
Absolutely.
Very tough when you have stage 4. It was a real shock to me, as I'm sure it was to you. So I think, first of all, just his health and his survival is something all of us feel deeply about. I thought it was wonderful what the president did the other night. I thought it was typical of how despicable the Democrats have gotten, that a number of them were mean-spirited and nasty in a way that there's no reason to be. But I thought it was very, very much like Trump to realize that here's a moment when he can boost the morale of a friend of his, somebody who's been good to him, who he's known for many years down in Palm Beach. And I think at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm sure that Trump thought that this would be a morale boost and, might help him survive. And I thought it was a very, very nice gesture. And I thought the way they did it with Mrs. Trump putting the medal on right there, and I think you could tell it really emotionally meant a lot to Rush.
There's no doubt about it. But, I can't imagine, Mr. Speaker, going through these times without his powerful voice. I mean, and all the years, and you guys are close, and we've become close, all of us.
Well, there's two things. Gay Gaines is a dear friend of ours who you know well, she and Stanley. Many years ago, she had Rush and Bill Benner and me down at the same time. And we have this great picture of the three of us pretending we're a band. And
by the way, Gay is a great woman.
She treasures and I treasure.
Yeah, she's great.
She's just great. And so we go back. That was before Rush even had a place in Florida. And so, I just have spent many years listening to Rush, talking with him. I would say, in all honesty, in 1994, that he was absolutely invaluable. Remember, back then we didn't have Fox News. You were just beginning to emerge, but you weren't yet a national figure. And Rush was clearly the most important single national player from the conservative movement standpoint. And he did great work that year. And I think without him, we might well not have won. And certainly without him, conservatives would not have had a reasoned critique of the left because he was both very funny and very smart simultaneously.
All right, Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, great to hear from you. He is in our prayers. The good news is I believe in prayer, and I believe our science advancement, the research has come, and even in the last 5 years, they've made incredible strides, these wonderful people that work to heal us, and that's where our hearts are for him.